award recipient. I'm a junior at Oak Hall School in Gainesville, and I will be your moderator this afternoon for the 2021 Teen Town Hall meeting. I would like to thank the panel, our host, and Children's Week Florida. Now in its 26th year, Children's Week is a unique opportunity for children, youth, and families to learn more about the legislative process and advocacy in Florida, while encouraging decision makers to keep the needs of children and youth at the forefront of their policy agendas. And thank you to the members of our audience, members for being here today. We're excited to have you all here as we come together to discuss ideas for how to create a brighter future for Florida's children. Now, we will recognize today's panelists, many of whom also serve on the Florida Children and Youth Cabinet. Executive Director Alan Abramowitz with the Florida Guardian Ad Litem Program, Judge Jessica G. Costello from the Hillsborough County Court, Chief Child Advocate and Director Zachary Gibson in the Governor's Office of Adoption and Child Protection, Secretary Siobhan Harris of the Department of Children and Families, Secretary Simone Marstiller of the Agency for Healthcare Administration, Deputy Director Tom Rice from the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and two special guests. The first is the Executive Director, Dr. Dakian Graham, from the Office of Independent Education at the Florida Department of Education. And the second is State Representative Christine Hunchkowski, District 96 in Broward County, and former mayor of the city of Parkland. Thank you all so much for being here and providing us with this wonderful opportunity. Today, you'll be answering questions posed by the youth advocates who have participated in the Florida YMCA Youth in Government Teen Town Hall program. YMCA Youth in Government is a youth-run, youth-led organization teaching the importance of civic engagement and servant leadership to middle and high school students across the state. In Youth in Government, we have learned how to speak our minds, widen our perspectives, and advocate for the improvement of our communities. Youth in Government delegates spend the school year writing legislative bills, executive policy proposals, and judicial briefs, culminating in a full model government experience at our state assembly held each spring. In the 64 years since our program was founded, we have aimed to teach youth about the importance of public service and putting the needs of our communities first. We come from diverse backgrounds and we all carry with us a multitude of dreams, but what unites us is our dedication to service. They are not the leaders of tomorrow, but the leaders of today. Joining us today are 11 extraordinary students. For the past 2 months, these advocates have researched and analyzed some of the most pressing issues facing the state. Now, let's introduce the 2021 Youth Advocate panel members. Edward Collins, Jocelyn Hetrick, Anire Martinez, Martine Martinez, Angeles Mejia, Kira O'Mahony, myself, Ria Patel, Shoshana Kasha, Caitlin Small, James Williams, and Brendan Young. Each youth advocate will have 1 minute to pose their question to the panel. Following the presentation, 3 members will be given 1 minute each to reply as thoroughly as possible. Please adhere to these times in order to allow all youth advocates to have the opportunity to pose their questions. If there are additional questions, we invite teen audience members to submit them in the chat, and they will be asked as time allows. Now that we have reviewed the procedure, let's begin our 2021 Teen Town Hall meeting with a question from youth advocate Kira O'Mahony.
Hello, I'm Kira O'Mahony, a junior at Pineview School in Sarasota County. Florida Statute 1006.07 requires active shooter drills to be done at least as often as other emergency drills. Without a set standard, drills vary starkly between districts, many not warning students beforehand, some going as far as to role-play shooter scenarios, as popularized by the company Alice. A study done by Georgia Tech suggests such drills lead to an average of a 39% increase in depression and a 42% increase in the stress and anxiety of students, teachers, and parents. What are some solutions being considered to battle this negative impact on students' mental health?
I would like to now open the floor to any of our panelists, whichever one would like to speak first.
I would like to speak on that, if that's okay.
Totally okay.
This is Christine Hunchkowski, and that's a great question. It's actually been something that's been very much a concern in my community, given what we've been through after the mass shooting. We had the increase in drills, which was triggering to a lot of the students who had been through the horrible experience. The issue right now is that any emergency drills, active shooter drills, they are now linked to what other drills are already in place. And the core of the problem in the number of drills is that a fire drill is required every month according to the fire standards. And therefore, because that's required every month, every other drill is required. And the active shooter drills are also required on a monthly basis. So there are two ways to go about it. Either to unlink how the active shooter drills, how often they need to be, and to change how often the fire drills need to happen. These should, first of all, in any of these drills, they should be done in a developmentally appropriate way. The last thing they should be doing is causing further anxiety. In our community, they do let the parents know ahead of time and, try and make it so that it's not too traumatic. But it's definitely important to have the mental health counselors, guidance counselors involved in the process. And also, just as an FYI, so with a fire drill, you go outside and you congregate in an area, which is the exact opposite training that you do in an active shooter situation. So actually, the two drills work against each other as far as training goes. So I definitely think this is something that needs to be looked at. For any of you who feel strongly about this issue, I might suggest you talk to your school boards and ask what their position is on it, and if there is a concern regarding how this impacts student mental health, that they send that information to the state legislature so that they know that this is a concern, not just in certain pockets of Florida, but throughout Florida, so that we can work on addressing it. And actually, this is something I recently addressed in our committees, and I think it's a great question, and it does impact the youth. And please feel free to reach out to me, because it's something I would like to work on with you if you are interested in it.
Thank you for that response. I do want to remind our panelists for 1-minute responses if possible. So is there another panelist who would like to share an answer?
Hi, Rita. This is Zach Gibson. I'll share a few comments. I'm going to build off what Representative Hanchovsky said. Is that these are required drills, and unfortunately, we live in an era now where we have to do these type of drills. As I think about the challenges associated with it and how it can also trigger our youth, certainly it's unfortunate, but we have to go through that process. And I think what's really key to all of this is certainly our abilities to utilize the tools that are available through the Department of Education. We have the Fortify Florida app. And really what that app is all about is if you see something, say something, right? And I think as we look at scenarios that after the fact, we recognize that as adults, it may take us a little longer to recognize what's going on out there, but our youth have many times firsthand knowledge, or they see signs and recognize where challenges are. And I think really a key component to all of this is the important role that everyone plays beyond adults, but also our kids, being able to recognize something and being able to speak to a trusted adult. I think that's another strategy that we can consider as we continue to work through the different challenges that we have associated with active school shooting drills and things of that nature.
Thank you. Do we have any more responses? Go for it.
Just quickly, I wanted to say that I am and have been for the last couple of years a member of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission. And as you all know, or probably know, the discussion about active shooter drills and training and things like that was a significant issue and topic for discussion in front of that commission. And we did talk about what are the effects on the kids and that it needs to be age appropriate, things like that. And so the one thing I would suggest to you all is to keep an eye out for the next time the commission is meeting. I don't know exactly when that is, but there always is a public comment component to that meeting. I think it would actually be refreshing to hear from the students, right? To hear about what your experiences have been. I think that's an important piece of what we all need as a commission to make the best decisions going forward. We've heard from parents and other stakeholders in this, but I would suggest, putting in some public comment at one of those meetings.
Can I just add one thing really quick?
Sorry, I was on mute. I said sure.
Okay, I just want to add, I echo everything that the prior panelists stated, and just want to let you all know that at the Department of Children and Families, we work closely with the Department of Education to try to make sure that we understand the needs of students, and to the extent students are having a difficult time, there are resources that are available in terms of speaking with a trained counselor. And so definitely want to make sure that those needs are being met, and that can be done face-to-face or via telehealth.
All right, thank you. We will now hear from our next speaker today, Shoshana Quasha.
Hello, my name is Shoshana Quasha, and I am a junior at Pineview High School in Sarasota County. Section 1003.42 of Florida statutes currently requires comprehensive health education be taught in middle and high schools. This statute, however, does not require that the curriculum is taught by trained instructors, lacks a medically accurate standard, and does not require youth to be taught about topics on sexual health recommended by the Division of Adolescent and School Health. The National Survey of Family Growth found that teens who received comprehensive sex education were 50% less likely to report a teen pregnancy compared to the standard abstinence-only education. And studies from the CDC found these programs also delay the onset of sexual activity and reduce the number of sexual partners. Currently, the Florida Department of Education has developed a community toolkit which equips schools with the proper resources to implement comprehensive sex education, but it is used by less than half of the 86% of secondary schools who have access to it, meaning sexual education remains lacking and inconsistent throughout Florida. What are some of the proposed solutions to combat this gap in education?
Great, thank you so much, Shoshana. Is there any panelists wishing to answer first?
Ria, I'll just begin before Mr. Gibson continues. But I think it starts with having those available tools there. And you mentioned that we at the Department of Education have provided those opportunities for there to be the correct or the informative teaching. And so now it's a matter of moving from having the tools available then to having the tools distributed and making sure everyone is aware that the tools are available. And so it's just a matter of improving and increasing that communication so that we understand that the tools that to facilitate that correct education are available. So now we have to make sure that they are implementing those things.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, and thank you, Dr. Dre. Great to see you on camera. I guess, from my comments, the Department of Education has done some pretty amazing work. I have the opportunity to work with their health education department. We've been partnering collaboratively with the Department of Health around our Healthy School Partnership. And I think, really it's a matter of ongoing communication with the districts who may not be using this to reinforce their awareness of the availability of information for their use. I think it's an ongoing discussion, and certainly too, we want to ensure any educational information being provided is delivered by people who are trained, right? I think it's an ongoing discussion, a very important discussion, because I think the statistics that Shoshana brought up really bring light to, this is an area where we could pay more attention to, and I think the ongoing communication with those districts is certainly needed.
Thank you. Yes, would you like to speak?
Yes, Alan Brownwood's Guardian Alignment Program. There may be things you want to do to educate your school board, their elected officials, But I think no matter what, if you're a parent, you still have responsibility for your children. And so if you happen to be in a school district that doesn't educate the way you want, you're still the parent, and you can still ensure your children get the education they need. So I think one thing is parents have to take responsibility, that what's happening in schools is what they want to happen in schools, or they can go to the school board meetings, and there's always an opportunity for public comment. And that would be my comment. There's still always the parent that can be the safeguard if they know that something's not being taught in their schools that they believe needs to be taught.
Thank you. All right. Well, with that, we will move on to our next speaker today. We will now hear from youth advocate Caitlin Small.
Hello. My name is Caitlin Small, and I'm a homeschooled sophomore out of Baker County. According to the census of 2020, the poverty rate in Florida is 12.7%. A Pew Research Center conducted a study that showed 59% of low-income households fear that their children will not be able to complete their studies because they will not have access to a device or internet connection. They were forced to use cell phones if one was available and to connect to public Wi-Fi. The government has already been helping families with their issues during this pandemic, but how can we ensure that these low-income households have ample access to the internet for health and educational purposes?
Thank you, Caitlin. Are there any panelists wishing to speak about that?
I'll start on that one because as you know, as the major, not counting separate and apart from the Department of Health, my agency sort of oversees the state Medicaid program in particular, and we've been talking a lot going through and coming out of the pandemic about the use of technology in delivery of healthcare services, right? So many of the providers that we work with want to continue using, because they've had to use technology during this time of COVID when people weren't going anywhere, particularly our behavioral health folks. So, you know, they've been giving people therapy sessions using their phone. So I don't want us to discount, you know, the value of having a smartphone in the house. It's actually been helpful to get people the health and mental health services that they have needed during the pandemic. But I do understand that there is still a need, though, for, you know, actual internet service in our underserved and rural communities and neighborhoods. And I think that in large part, guys, you know, a lot of this government can do by partnering with the private sector. I think that is really, that's where we get the most bang for our buck. That is bringing, you know, the Comcasts and the T-Mobiles and, you know, Bright House. It's bringing those folks to the table and giving, if we have to, giving the incentives to those companies to do this. But they're really the ones with the technology and the wherewithal to do it. If I remember correctly,
I'm sorry, we have to.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I know I'm taking up somebody else's minute. Go ahead.
Trying to adhere to the 1 minute as much as we can. So.
Absolutely.
If I could just jump in, this is a great topic, especially in the realm also of education, and it's something that the legislature has been looking at. There's one bill that we had up recently. It was House Bill 985, and it's about using federal funding to support online learning, to that the Department of Education would do a study of where there is a lack of broadband, so that more federal funding could go to access that. And just on a separate note, I think the beauty of having online learning as an option is when you're in a school that might not offer all the courses that you're looking for, that maybe you could virtually attend a course in another school while you're in your existing school, just giving more opportunities for students.
For sure, thank you. With that, we are going to move on to our next panelist or our next advocate. That way we can get through as many as possible. So our next question will be posed by Advocate Brendan Young.
Hello, my name is Brendan Young, and I'm a sophomore at Springstead High School in Reno County, part of the Nature Coast. With increased climate and sea level rise, there are projections of billions of dollars in impacts along Florida's coastline. We have over 75% of our population, 79% of our total economy, and a projected 900,000 jobs on our coast. Without early planning and infrastructure, billions in freshwater sources, properties, jobs, and irreplaceable marine habitats will be lost. The governor created the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection, which is committed to preparing for the coming coastal crises. The issue is that this important agency is without a dedicated trust fund or direct revenue source. Knowing that the members of this panel are experts in advocating in a public forum, how can Florida teens best advocate for a long-term protected trust fund and dedicated revenue source to build coastal resilience and infrastructure? Thank you.
Thank you for that thoughtful question, Brendan. Are there any panelists wishing to speak?
Could I jump in on this one as well, please, Rhea? Sorry. First of all, I'd just like to mention I'm representing House District 96, which the seat was formerly held by my friend and an incredible environmental activist, Representative Kristen Jacobs, who unfortunately passed away almost a year ago now. And she has been recognized by the Florida House, and it's going to the Senate now by naming the coral reef system after her. She was amazing. And she brought a lot of this stuff to light many, many years ago when people weren't paying attention yet in Florida. The good news is the business community, the tourism community, a lot of different communities are now realizing the importance of resilience. And right now, there's a bill moving through the state legislature that would have the dock stamp tax, $111 million of that every year going toward flooding mitigation. So that's one thing that's happening right now. And as the youth and as the future, because this is something that you're going to be dealing with, I think the more you can talk with your representatives, the better about the importance of this to you.
Thank you so much for that. Is there another panelist wishing to speak?
Hi, Rita. I just want to build off of the representative's comments. In addition to speaking with legislators, I think there are water management districts across our state that are also hosting public meetings that offer opportunities for public comment. I think those are additional avenues for youth to consider in sharing your voice around concerns you have related to coastal flooding and all that. I think those are avenues where your voice can be heard and get into the ears of the folks that are going to be making some local decisions that may roll up to the state level as well. So Brendan, thank you for your question.
Again, great question, Brendan. Is there any other panelist who would like to answer his question? If not, we can move on to our next youth advocate, Anaya Martinez.
Hello, cabinet members. My name is Anaida Martinez, and I am a junior in Miami Art Studio as part of the Entertainment Law Magnet. First off, I would like to thank you all for being here today and for taking the time to listen to the issues that the youth in Florida seek to address. Substance abuse has become a more prevalent issue over the past few years. And after conducting extensive research, I found that Florida had faced an increase of 38.4% in drug overdose deaths from July 2019 to July 2020. And while this in itself is quite a frightening number because 38.4% of Florida's population is around 8 million people, my biggest concern is that 56% of high school students have tried alcohol, and a startling 53.3% have tried other drugs in their lifetime. Alcohol abuse continues to be the most common drug among Florida teens, with 20.5% of students reporting drinking it in the past 30 days in 2014. I am aware that the Florida government has several rehab programs, such as the Recovery First Treatment Program, that assist residents who are struggling with addiction. However, recent statistics prove that teenagers are still suffering, specifically minors from ages 12 and up. Therefore, my question is, what are some solutions that the Florida government is proposing to lessen substance abuse among its youth?
I respond to this question?
Totally.
That's a great question. Thank you, Anari, Ms. Martinez, for asking it. In my role, particularly as a judge on a weekly basis, I am exposed to teens who struggle with addiction and substance abuse issues of the exact types that you described and that you've done a lot of diligent research on. And so I want to answer your question with my 1 minute from the perspective of how our court system is addressing this important issue. And I'm sure some of my colleagues in the Children and Youth Cabinet will have some additional perspective from their areas of expertise as well. Often by the time an adolescent person's addiction is being addressed by the court system, by someone like me, it's because they're at the point where behavior connected to the substance abuse has brought the possibility of serious consequences, or the court and a judge becomes aware of a teenager or adolescent substance abuse when interacting with them in the context of family law or perhaps dependency related cases. What I wanted to explain to you from the perspective of our courts is that courts in the state of Florida have moved over the past 30 years to a much more proactive model when it comes to the issue of adolescent substance abuse. There's been a significant shift to what's called a problem-solving focus instead of a punitive focus. And that's because of some of the studies that you cited. They show that treatment, if it can be tailored to addressing the issues underlying or triggering substance abuse during these pivotal years, during the adolescent years, that we can significantly decrease the probability that a child or a teenager who's part of the court system doesn't become or remain an adult who's in that system. And just to give you a little bit of information, back in 1996, a judge here in Hillsborough County actually created the very first juvenile drug court in the state of Florida. That specialty court started out just with one singular focus. And I can tell you that over the past 30 years, it has moved to really a holistic focus dedicated to this one issue, because even 30 years ago, we recognized how important it was to address it in a way that had a forward-looking focus, identifying and implementing efforts to end substance abuse in adolescence. And so I can tell you, I'm sure I'm over my minute, but from evaluation to treatment strategies and understanding the issues that lead to substance abuse, some of those issues that many of my colleagues have talked about already, those mental health and wellness focuses, coping skills, a lot of those issues that come into play, particularly in this phase of life. And most importantly, from my perspective, increased collaboration with our school systems at the ground level of identifying these issues and identifying students who can be at risk for substance abuse and addiction. I'm really proud of the progress that our courts have made on this difficult issue, but I can understand your perspective that there's always more that we can do.
Thank you. Would you like to share now?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Okay, so at my agency, the Department of Children and Families, we are responsible for, or we're the state mental health authority for the state. And so we're committed to and actively seek out opportunities to support prevention-based models and programs, as well as ensuring that adolescents who are contending with substance use have access to appropriate treatment. On a positive note, preliminary data shows an overall decline in drug overdose in 2020 and 2021, but there's still so much more that we should be doing. We partner with the Department of Health each year to conduct a survey of youth focused on substance use that helps us in determining where to target our efforts. Through that, we've been able to apply for and receive a couple grants that specifically focus on prevention, really looking at evidence-based strategies that can be used in the school system that increase education and awareness and really allow schools to tailor their strategies to best fit their student population. But really, more than anything, I think it's critical that we continue to have peer leaders such as yourselves and mentors who can serve as role models that help spread the message around the dangers of substance abuse.
Thank you. Thank you again to Inari for her amazing question and to our two lovely responses that we got. We're going to now move on to our next youth advocate, who will present a question from Angeles Mejia.
Hello, my name is Angeles Mejia, a student currently attending Northeast High in Broward County. I am bringing to your attention the issue of inadequate laws and protections currently put into place for LGBTQ+ students in Florida. Efforts can be made to ensure that these youth receive protection within our schools. According to a 2020 Williams Institute report, there are currently 114,000 LGBTQ plus youth in Florida, yet there are no statewide anti-discrimination laws that prevent them from being mistreated in the school system. These inequalities primarily impact Black and Latinx LGBTQ plus youth, as Florida students of color who identify as gay or lesbian reported being 3 times as likely than their white peers to be threatened and assaulted with a weapon on school premises. Inadequate protections combined with racial disparities leave our youth exposed to dangers that a non-accepting community presents. It would be imperative to enact laws immediately that protect LGBTQ plus youth, especially in our education system. What efforts are you making to ensure that these youth receive protection within our schools?
Thank you, Angelus, for your extremely thoughtful question. Are there any panelists wishing to speak?
This is Alan Abramowitz. That is a great question. And, being with the Children's Cabinet, we actually took on how we could prevent suicide in youth, suicide prevention in youth. And one of the first things, and the First Lady made me chair of the committee that led us to the idea of mentoring. And if you look at the 2017 Department of Education Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which identifies vulnerable youth in school, LGBTQ youth were at the top. I mean, when they talked about the past year, 4.7% of heterosexual youth and 22.5% of LGBTQ youth had attempted suicide. So you can see the issue in virtually every issue, LGBTQ had a higher finding. So what you see is Department of Education, all the agencies, taking on. One of the strategies we use is mentoring. At the Guardian Ad Litem program, we have more than 10,000 volunteers, and we required our volunteers to watch training on mentoring because they're assigned to children and we want children to be able to talk to them. But when you talk about changing laws, you're really talking about educating legislators or educating yourself on who you want to vote for. And that's important. But I can tell you right now, each of the agencies are addressing it within their own agency. For instance, Department of Children and Families, when they did rulemaking on placing children, they had, during the rulemaking, they have an open forum and every group you can imagine showed up, and they ended up with a rule that everyone was happy with, including groups from different sides like Equality Florida or the Catholic Association. So I think through the process and through education, you end up with good rules and good laws. And that's the key, is to continue to educate about the issue, and education is the key.
Great, thank you. Are there any other panelists wishing to speak?
I'd like to add to Mr. Abramowitz. You bring up so much that's so important to this conversation, but at the core of it is education. We suffer from lack of knowledge. And when you talk about the way that we educate, I think it's important to understand what those significant points are and understand the role that character education plays within the landscape. We have to learn to be collaborative members of society because we're not living in this place in a bubble in and of ourselves. And so being aware of the other people who are sharing this space with us, then also understanding how we can collaborate and value those uniquenesses in order to be a combined strength is so important to moving forward as positive contributing members of society. And so one of the focuses that the Department of Education has taken is we are currently starting to develop character education standards so that we can make sure that that is something that is embedded within every single classroom. As a classroom teacher, that was something we talked about, respect and tolerance every single day. And we were able to create a collaborative community because we not only understood, or we worked to understand those differences and the uniqueness and the perspectives that everyone comes and brings, because we're all products of our own experience, but we also learned to value those and we're able to bring out and highlight those elements whenever the time came.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next youth advocate, I do want to remind everyone about the 1 minute for hopefully answering questions, just so we can hear as many of our youth advocates as possible and hopefully any in the audience. So with that, let's hear from our next youth advocate, Edward Collins.
Hello, my name is Edward Collins. I am a freshman at Winter Springs High School in Seminole County. Studies show that teenagers with access to the outdoors and nature have improved cognitive functioning and better motor coordination, as well as many other benefits. As Florida's outdoors is destroyed, it becomes much harder for teens to have access to nature. Undeveloped land in Florida is declining, and this must be stopped. The Florida Forever program has not received full funding as legislators choose to spend that money on other things. Additionally, MCORS is currently trying to build a series of roads which task forces have failed to find reasonable need for. These roads will destroy over 52,800 acres of vitally important wetlands. Currently, House Bill 763 and Senate Bill 1030 are being introduced to stop these roads being built. What other types of actions can be taken by state policymakers to ensure that Florida's youth have access to nature in Florida's shrinking wildlands?
Thank you, Edward, for that so important question. Are there any panelists wishing to answer?
I'll take a jump at it if that's okay. That's a great question. First of all, I think some of it is also letting our youth know about what they can be doing outdoors. I've been exploring some of our national parks here in Florida. Absolutely amazing. And I mentioned earlier, for example, the coral reef system that was named after former Representative Kristen Jacobs. There is absolutely more that we can be doing, and there needs to be more of an investment. Regarding the building that happens on vacant land, that is governed by the law, where we have the Burt Harris Act, where there are strong property rights. So it's often causing a conflict of allowing people their property rights that they have by law to build, but then doing it in a way that's protective of the environment and also making sure we still have that green space and that those natural areas that, number one, they're protected and that they're available for use. But Edward, that was a great question. It's something I think we need to be focusing more on as a state, and also making sure that our youth and our families and everybody in the state of Florida is aware of what we do have available.
Thank you. Are there any other panelists?
Hi, Rita. This is Zach Gibson. You know, when I heard Edward share his question, what came to my mind is the important role that our youth definitely need to be outdoors, right? I mean, Florida has so many things to offer, and certainly its outdoor nature is one of the shining stars of what we have to offer, you know. And what also came to my mind is, and I don't know if everybody agrees with this, but there's been a term out there that says sitting is the new smoking, right? And because of the influx of technology and everything we're dealing with, how are we getting our youth to be off our devices and doing things active and certainly enjoying the outdoors, as Edward highlighted, because we've got so many great things out there. You know, the other thing I would say to you, Edward, around your question is, again, you know, the legislative session is in progress right now. We've got a representative right here. They need to hear your voice, right? They need to hear yours, other youth, folks from your communities, to let them know how you feel about the decisions that they are going to be making. So your voice is going to be critical. Yours and everybody else's voice from our youth are certainly critical to this effort as we look at how do we maintain our lands effectively in the state of Florida.
Thank you. Is there one more panelist who would like to answer the question? If not, we can move on to our next question, which will be posed by Jocelyn Hetrick.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Hetrick. I'm a sophomore at Florida High in Tallahassee, Florida. Senate Bill 7026 raised the age to purchase a gun in Florida to 21 in 2018 due to the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. Recent shootings in Colorado and Georgia goes against the reasoning that Senate Bill 7026 plays a big enough impact to reduce mass shootings, considering that both of the shooters in those states were over the age of 21. By the end of 2019, there were 417 mass shootings in the US. according to data from the nonprofit Gun Violence Archive. There has also been an increase in the amount of mental health issues since the start of COVID, according to the CDC, which increases the likelihood of mass killings. As COVID is coming to an end and students are returning to school, what more can be done to promote school safety from active shooters?
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that question. Are there any panelists wishing to speak?
Yes, I will try that one, at least open the conversation. So Ms. Hetrick, there's actually a lot going on sort of behind the scenes that I think it's important for you all to know about, that the state of Florida is doing to keep you all safe in schools. We talked earlier, obviously, about drills, but every school in the state of Florida has had to submit to the Department of Education a safety plan, and to do a number of things to make sure that structurally and on your campuses that that the school building and grounds are safe. Procedures have had to have been in place. They've had to report all of these things. We also, with a partnership between the Department of Education and the Department of Law Enforcement and other state government partners, have put together processes by which we keep an eye out, right, for individuals who might have some issues or who exhibit signs of, threatening behavior. You heard earlier about Fortify Florida. It is an app that anybody can use. See something, say something. That is the main one. I know that other school districts across the state might have their own, locally based apps that you can use. There is a lot going on behind the scenes to make sure that our kids and our teachers and our school compounds and buildings and areas remain as safe as we possibly can. So please know that a lot is being done. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can do, but there are lots of people at the state and local levels who are constantly looking at this to come up with other ways to keep you all safe.
Thank you. Is there a second panelist wishing to speak? And before I let the second panelist go, I do want to remind about the 1 minute. I'm so sorry. I would love to hear all of you speak as long as possible, but just to have time for all of our advocates. Is there another panelist wishing to speak?
Hi, it's Christine Hunchofsky again. If I could talk about this. Great question. School safety is a bunch of things. It is making sure that there's single points of entry. But one of the most important things, and I just put in the chat, the most recent report from the Secret Service on averting school problems. It's really connecting with the community. People who are struggling are going to be showing signs of that. They're most likely going to talk to a classmate. They might talk to a trusted teacher or guidance counselor. So it's really important that we have these communities of connection where people feel safe to report something that they're concerned about, and also where people feel safe talking to other people about it. So I would just, as was mentioned previously, there's a lot going on in the school system, and but the main thing is to, if you see something that's of concern, to report it to somebody, and making sure that that something's done with the threat assessment team that is available at the school.
Of course, thank you. Is there a third panelist wishing to speak?
Rita, this is Zach Gibson. The comment I'd like to make is, certainly, unfortunately, because of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, it's given us all an opportunity to kind of take a step back and really reassess where we're at. To build on Secretary Marstiller's comments, I think one of the very positive things that has resulted in all this is certainly the ongoing communication and collaboration amongst our agencies. Certainly at the state level, but really at the local level, right? Where we bring different system partners together to really talk about how do these issues impact our system individually, but then collectively, how do we better communicate and collaborate our efforts so that there's coordination in the work that we do? That has to be an ongoing effort. And I'm proud to say that I know there's some amazing efforts happening across our state with agencies coming together to have some of these hard conversations around what are we doing and how are we effectively communicating and coordinating our efforts. Those efforts definitely will continue. And again, I think those efforts will certainly continue to move us forward as we look to further strengthen our school safety initiatives.
Of course, thank you. Is there any other panelists who would like to share? If not, we'll move on to our next question. This next question will be asked by youth advocate Martine Martinez.
Hello, panelists. My name is Martine Martinez, and I'm a senior at Lakewood High School in St. Petersburg. All of us have grown up with the sense that college is the only sure way to success. College prep has become the focus of the objective of the modern education system. The consequences of this can be seen in the drastic shortages of trades and skilled laborers such as welders, plumbers, and electricians. Additionally, there is a need for nurses in Florida, predating the pandemic. Further, the cost of college is increasing more and more each year, jumping about 25% in the past decade. How do we address these shortages while keeping college as an avenue for youth, keeping it as a path that youth can take advantage of?
Thank you, Martine. Are there any panelists who would like to answer this question first? Go for it.
I'll jump on this one. So Martine, really great question. And from the teacher perspective, we have to make sure that we're communicating to our students that college isn't the only option, but then also acknowledging that college isn't for everybody. For me, I love college and it's great. That doesn't work for some of my students. And so you have to understand the avenues that play a role in certificates and technical skill building. There actually are two initiatives that are being encouraged right now by the governor they're called the Get There Faster initiatives. And one of those is targeted specifically at our secondary schools in expanding the high quality career dual enrollment offerings to Florida's high school students. So really emphasizing those technical and career pathways that can allow them to develop those skills necessary to have a specific trade that will help them to turn around and contribute to the community around them. And so there are things that are currently in place in order to encourage those elements to continue to move forward, to show that there is more than just college opportunities that will allow you to have a successful and living a positive experience.
Thank you. Are there any other panelists wishing to speak?
I would just want to add to Dr. Graham's statement about making sure we understand that what defines success or what brings success as a working adult is as diverse as the people in this room. So giving you all the opportunity to learn about the multitude of career options that are available to you, from pre-professional paths to skilled labor work, to the many job options that are, connected to our ever-expanding technological universe, which you all are on the forefront of and know more about than most of the adults in the room, gives you an opportunity to think about where your individual greatest strengths can be used to their highest capacity, which is truly, in my opinion, where you will find a success. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's in a college classroom, and we need to make sure that we have opportunities for you to explore all of those options.
Sure. Is there any other panelists wishing to speak? I feel like I saw a few hands.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here. I'm on the Education and Employment Committee up here in the House, and this has been something we've been talking about all session. So this question and this topic couldn't even be more pertinent to what we've been working on up here. There are many pathways to success. Every person is an individual. Everybody brings a different skill set to everything they do. And I think you are absolutely right. That needs to be really reflected in the different opportunities that are presented to students, to our youth, of the different paths that are available. It is having the different certificates available, but it's also partnering with businesses to bringing them in, mentoring students on the different things they could be doing. It's really time for this state and this country to really reflect on what the different pathways are, what different opportunities are out there, communicate it. And as a society, and as grown-ups and as individuals, we need to realize there are many, many, many different pathways to success, and acknowledge that and then support it in our programming.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Rice might have had his hand up, or?
Yeah, thank you. And our agency serves individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we really recognize that there's a lot of students particularly with intellectual disabilities who are not going to be going to college. But that does not mean that they're not going to be able to acquire skills that'll enable them to obtain a job and really be a contributing member of society. So there's a lot of things we do. We partner with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation within the Department of Education and provide a lot of education and training, early on. We provide job coaches that really are work alongside the person to really help them be successful in getting and keeping a job. And all the research and data shows that individuals with developmental disabilities, particularly intellectual disabilities that are employed, they themselves have such a much better quality of life. Their self-esteem has increased, and from an employer's perspective, they consistently say these are some of our most reliable and productive employees out there. So I would encourage all of y'all as the present and future leaders to support those businesses that hire individuals with developmental disabilities. And if you yourselves, once you're done with school, have your own businesses or in positions to hire individuals with disabilities, we would certainly encourage y'all to do so. But we definitely recognize that college is not the only path to success in society. Thank you.
Thank you. We definitely appreciate hearing from you. Are there any other panelists wishing to speak? Okay. If not, we will now hear from our next youth advocate, James Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is James Williams, and I'm a senior at Durant High School in Hillsborough County. Youth voter turnout has historically been overlooked. However, in the 2020 general election, it jumped to 55% in Florida, up 13% from 2016. In addition, the 2020 election was deemed the most secure in history, with 0 proven cases of voter fraud in Florida. Currently, there's proposed legislation such as Senate Bill 90, which would ban the use of drop boxes and heavily restrict absentee voting. The youth electorate is responsible for nearly 1 million requested absentee ballots in Florida. In an effort to avoid disenfranchisement, how can we be sure that Florida continues to make voting more accessible to everyone and that the youth voter turnout continues to rise?
Thank you, James. Such an important question. Are there any panelists wishing to speak?
I'm happy to talk about this one as well. I love voting. I love when young people are engaged. Our 2 boys, they used absentee ballots to vote because they were away at college. It's incredibly important. We had the most secure elections ever last go around, and to have the youth so involved is incredibly important because if you become a active voter when you're younger, that's going to continue through adulthood, making you a more engaged citizen, and which is exactly what we want in this country. So I think we absolutely have to continue with the absentee ballots. I think we do have to work on maybe getting them out a little earlier, because I know several students who were away at college were either not getting them on time or having to request another one because they never got their original one. So anything we can do to make it more accessible to the youth is incredibly important, because we want to really instill that good citizenship early on and make sure that people start voting when they're young and continue through, and realize that your voice is incredibly important, because the people you're electing now will determine a lot of what the state looks like in the future, and will be making decisions on policy that affects you. I'm sorry, did I go over a minute again?
You're totally
It's
okay.
wonderful having the youth involved.
You're totally okay. We do have a little extra time, so it's okay, but we did love hearing the answers. So are there any other panelists wishing to speak?
Okay, Rita, I'll give it a shot. Certainly, I'm in full agreement with the comments made by the representative. The youth voice is so important. And certainly as you guys are in school, we can't emphasize how important US government is as well as civics, right? Because those two courses really can help build a basic understanding that hopefully will spark interest for further knowledge gained as well as involvement in the process, right? So, whether it's fully accessible or not accessible, the voices still need to be heard, right? And our youth need to be able to come together to identify meaningful ways where their voices are heard. And certainly your voice can be heard through how you vote. So get out there and vote, right? I think that's definitely a key component.
For sure. Are there any other panelists wishing to speak?
Ria, I'll add some comments. And just piggybacking off of what's been said so far, I think the key word that comes to mind as I'm listening to the other answers that were provided is relevance. And so much of what the youth brings to what's happening worldwide is relevance. And those who are making the decisions should be those who can connect with those who understand what is relevant. The picture of a teacher trying to do the most recent dance to be cool with the students, but it's really bad, and so they're made fun of by their students because of how terrible it is what comes to mind when I think of a world in which our youth are not expressing their opinions and being really taking engagement, just like the students who have contributed today in what's happening around the world. And so there's such a powerful voice, but them understanding really how much weight and the impact that you all have on the decisions that are made through the expression and the use of your voice is so significant. So continuing to have opportunities like this, where you're engaging with those individuals who are able to really emphasize that impact is so significant.
Completely agree. Thank you so much for that response. Are there any more panelists wishing to speak? If not, I will now pose my own town hall question. So, as of 2020, Florida has the third most children in poverty, with 737,415 children living in hardship. Studies have shown that these children face many disadvantages, from not having access to nutritious meals before school to reduced verbal skills from poor school conditions. Looking at the 2018 through 19 school grades from the Florida Department of Education, low-income students presented the lowest passing rates for the Florida Standards assessments. These results suggest that in Florida, poverty rates can correlate substantially with poor performance in school, and as a result, can provide the largest impact on a child's entire life. While Florida's government has made strides in combating this issue through projects like the School Readiness Program for children younger than 13, what is our government doing for those students who are older than 13 and have no place to turn to for help? Are there any panelists wishing to?
Ria, first of all, it gives me a chance to congratulate you last night for being recognized. That was awesome. I love it. That was the highlight of the evening. But I want to point out earlier in that evening, Mark Wilson, the president of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, had an opportunity to talk about poverty and how we improve. And I don't remember his numbers, but something sticks out in my mind where he said like 40 of our zip codes have all the poverty. It wasn't that extreme, but basically it was so significant that so few parts of the state, and I know there's zip codes in every city that has the poverty, and that's the same place where children are being removed from their parents, substance abuse, food stamps, things like that. And he talked about what he was doing. They're creating a prosperity plan to focus on these zip codes to break the intergenerational poverty. And I think that's the starting point, the public-private partnership with the chambers and government and citizens to take it on. We heard other questions about the internet and how do we do that? I think this is part of it. I think it's a great question. And again, congratulations, you're awesome.
Thank you. Are there any other panelists wishing to speak?
Ria, I want to jump in here and I echo Mr. Abramowitz's comments. I was there last night and it was the highlight to see you awarded. So you've brought up or made an excellent point about the role nutritious meals plays when it comes to academic success. At the department, we're responsible for administering the supplemental nutrition assistance program to families in need. Not sure that students may be aware of that. So families who qualify get a debit-like card that they can use at grocery stores to help purchase nutritious food items. This program benefits thousands of Floridians every year. And one of the great things about it is that there's an educational component that can help children and families learn how to cook healthy meals. You know, one of the things that we faced during the pandemic too is having a number of students not be able to return to brick and mortar and having to learn virtually. And for some students, the free lunch program that schools offer is integral in helping to meet their nutritional needs. And so we were able to partner with the federal government to make sure that we were providing additional financial assistance to families who had their kids virtually learning. And we're excited to continue that program through this spring. And because of it, we've been able to distribute over $600 million in funding. But I think most importantly is making sure that students feel comfortable raising their hands and sharing any struggles that they may be having at home with administrators or teachers at their school, so we can get the word out and we can provide more awareness and education about the types of programs that I just mentioned.
Completely agree. Thank you. Are there any other panelists wishing to speak?
Ria, in collaboration and in kind of commenting off of what Mr. Abramowitz mentioned, when we start talking about targeting those zip codes that he mentioned, now we're starting to talk about the word equity and providing the needed resources to the elements that need them. But also we've got to talk about the fact that this is a systemic issue. And so we've got to address it on a systems level and really look at what caused those areas to become areas of poverty and look at the historical side of these areas. Where are these areas that have always been covered in poverty, and how are we getting those and funneling those resources and being intentional with the movement of those areas and getting them the resources they need and the supports they need to be able to come out of that. And one of those elevating items, you know, a rising tide raises all ships, is education, and making sure that they have a fair, equitable access to educational institutions that provide them to be the best version of themselves. And that's where you start putting into places those systems, building systems that combat the systems that have contributed to them getting where they are.
For sure. Thank you so much for the response. Are there any other panelists? I see that Mr. Gibson.
Hi, Rita. This is Zach. I appreciate Dr. Graham, Dr. Dre sharing those comments, because certainly I think education's where it's at, right? We won't get anywhere further unless we are offering some education to the families within those communities, as well as the youth, right? But I think for our families, you know, helping them understand key elements that for some of us, we assume, right? We assume all families may know certain things, where unfortunately that's just not the case. And our abilities to offer education to the families and the youth, I think, are really critical as we look to continue to break the cycle of poverty in our state. I think also too that, you know, for the youth in particular, you know, how can we help get them connected to other programs and services that offer safe environments and supportive environments? What comes to my mind are after school and out of school programs. They are such critical components because, you know, families may still be working. There's nobody at home. We know what idle minds are the devil's hands, or I don't know exactly that term, but I think for the most part, everybody's getting it right. But, you know, I think again, how do we create the awareness of those other opportunities, right? Because certainly as we work with families, our focus is really upon the kids and really helping them develop their knowledge, their awareness, their ability to put things into action that can enable them to successfully transition to adulthood and be productive and self-sufficient.
Thank you. With that is all of our youth advocates for today. So I would like to thank every single one of them for their excellent questions. I would also like to thank for our panelists, our advocates, our staff, and most of all, our audience for their passions here today for the issues facing children and youth. Our work did not start today, nor will it end with the conclusion of this teen town hall. It is now up to each of us to continue advocating for Florida's children and fighting for a brighter future for them all. With that, I would like to share our panel to briefly share any final thoughts.
Well, I'll jump in first, guys. I want to thank you for giving me and my colleagues the opportunity to chat with you and answer your questions today. It is clear to me that you have all put a great deal of thought and heart and soul into bringing these issues forward. Every single question has been on point and relevant to things that are happening right now in the state of Florida and in the United States. And it is heartening indeed to know that folks your age are so well-versed and have educated yourselves on these issues. And I want to encourage you all, probably I don't need to, but I want to encourage you all to continue pushing these issues and advocating for what you believe is right, and for advocating for yourselves and for the kids who are coming up after you. It is the youth voice that's going to make the biggest change moving forward. And I'm very, very proud of you all and very impressed by what I've seen from you all today. So keep it up.
Yeah, if I could just jump in as well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you. You have made my day by including me here. I appreciate that I was invited to hear what your concerns are, the issues that are relevant to you, and that and I love that you also you're not just focusing on what issues are important to you today, but you're looking into the future of things, issues that will affect your future, the future of other youth. And I just say, continue to stay involved. Your voice is heard, your voice is needed, and you are all better at technology and organizing than a lot of people in my age group are. And I want you to realize that you have that power, and that you should feel very comfortable using it and advocating and making sure that the topics that are important to you, that affect your life, that affect your future, that those are on the forefront of people like myself and the others on this call, so that we know the things that we should also be looking at to secure the future, because you guys are the future. And I just want to say thank you so much. This has been a joy for me to be here today. So thank you.
This teen town hall was great. I love the questions. I think next year we need an adult town hall where we get to ask you questions, because you are the experts about what's happening in the schools. We could probably learn from you. So just a suggestion that maybe we get to ask a couple questions next year, because you all have done research, you're insightful, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. Our future's in good hands, and thank you for the work you did to get us to here and let us hear from you. It's good to know there were no foster care questions. That means foster care is doing good. So Department of Children and Families, you're doing great. So that's what that means. But anyway, I do appreciate all of you.
I just want to add my gratitude to all of you, and just a note of the substance of the questions that you all asked today were all solutions focused. And I thought that was an extraordinary perspective for each of you at this point in your lives to bring to some really difficult issues. And I just want to encourage you to remain solution focused as you move through into your extraordinarily bright futures. If I can tell anything by the substance of the questions, is that you all are going to make a huge difference. And if you maintain that focus, it's going to take you really far. And it truly was a joy to spend time with you this afternoon.
Echoing my panelists, it is an absolute pleasure to be here, an honor really to be able to engage with you in these situations and your concerns that you have. 3 words that I want to leave you with to continue to keep in mind as you're pushing forward, and that's resilience, perseverance, and perspective. As long as you continue to maintain those 3 things as those forward driving elements, you will continue to change the world. And you are already positively impacting the world around you, and continue to take that, and don't take that lightly. That's not, I don't say that as hyperbole. You literally will move on to change the world if you can maintain that resilience to continue to persevere through those hard times while maintaining that perspective that you have.
Thank you. Are there any other panelists who would like to share?
I think all the prior panelists said it best, so I'm not going to repeat. This has been amazing. I'm like 7 weeks on the job, and this was certainly the highlight of some of what I've been able to experience. So thank you all. I feel very comforted that you are our future.
Thank you. Mr. Rice, did you want to share?
Yeah, I guess what impressed me was that y'all really get what the first step in like effective advocacy is to really do your research, do your homework, and all the questions. It's just not like poverty is bad. You have statistics and research and data. You're citing specific sections of Florida law, and that's really the first key to really effectively making these changes that we want to make. So I'm just really impressed and just encourage you all to keep it up for sure. Thank you.
And Rita, the comment that I got is, again, I don't, everybody said some amazing stuff. I'm right there with them. Thank you all so much for the great work that you guys put into, dive deep into these issues and present them to us, right? You definitely challenged us today. And certainly the challenges will continue as you guys continue to grow in your areas of choice, right? We just, for me, it's a blessing because I'm behind a computer all day, so it's nice to talk to kids, right? So thank you so much for that opportunity. Congratulations again to you, Rita, and to all the student advocates for the great work that you're doing. Keep up the good stuff, man. We look forward to seeing you guys in the future and hearing your voices.
Thank you. We so appreciated hearing from all of you again today. It's definitely an honor being able to have all of our questions answered by you all. So thank you again. And with that, I would like to now call this 2021 Teen Town Hall to a close.